Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 57th Chicago International Film Festival. My name is Sam Flancher. I'm a programmer here, and it's my distinct privilege to be welcoming robust director Constance Meyer to the festival today. Constance, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you for receiving me, even virtually.
Yeah, it's been this is kind of an exciting inclusion, I would say, in our new directors competition because in I think it was 2016, your film Rhapsody won a prize in our short film competition. So we're thrilled to be welcoming you back into the fold with your first feature effort. So I want to just start at the beginning. Both the short film and the feature film star Gerard Depardieu, they're both, I would say, similar. There's some similar themes being tackled while the characters are different. You're talking about like human bodies and lonely souls and how they interact. Can you talk just about the genesis of the feature film idea and maybe how the short film influenced the creation of the feature?
Yeah, it was. I think the origin of the film is the two actors, the two main actors of the film, Deborah and Gérard, who really inspired me. I had them in mind, and both their personalities. Even though I didn't know Deborah, I had seen movies with her, and I had heard her, and she was really in my mind as I started to write. And Depardieu, I had known him because I had shot 3 short films with him before.
Mhm.
So their actual, personalities in a way, and their physicality was an inspiration. Then I also had this like weird image of a really robust man fainting in the arms of a woman, and this kind of weird image was kind of an obsession, and I needed to make a story out of it. So I thought, what kind of woman can support this kind of guy, and how is what kind of personality would she have, and how are they going to meet? So it's like both actors, my attraction to those two actors, and also this weird image that was in my head. I don't know why.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that it was started from an image and was built sort of out from there because the way you shoot both actors and sort of everyone in the film, even down to like the little dog in the film, the way you shoot the film seems to just become about bodies interacting with one another and shapes interacting with one another. Can you talk about that being like sort of a preoccupation, if you will?
Yes, it's kind of unconscious in a way. I wouldn't say it's something that I'm very voluntary or very conscious about, but it's always been my fascination for how body moves and how people look at each other, and how silence can, express a lot, and how, like, as you say, a dog, a baby, a little kid, or all those characters, the way they interact in space is something that really inspire me, and that I focus on when I direct, and even when I write. I think I like to put characters in situations when they have to, be in the same room, and how they are going to interact. Um, so yeah, I think the physicality is at the center of my cinema, even though it's just one film. So I don't want to be pretentious, but yeah, it's very important to me, and dialogues have to be, carved to not interfere with that, because that's the priority.
Yeah. I think that really comes to the fore in Deborah's performance specifically. The wrestling. I'm thinking specifically of this wonderful shot where they're doing warm-ups, running in a circle and dipping down, and she dips out of the frame and things like that. I'm just curious about her sort of training and working with her to sort of perfect that physicality and
Yeah,
collaborate on those images.
yeah, she trained for 3 months as a with a wrestling coach, that I had met a year before while I was writing. And he really, she met with him like several times a week. She was really rigorous with that. training, and I didn't want her to perform and to be perfect, because of course in 3 months you can't pretend to be exactly like, a professional wrestler. But I wanted her to feel comfortable, and that she could feel like she was doing a sort of choreography, and that she wouldn't be preoccupied with, is it good what I'm doing, is it right? So it was more about, again, a sensuality around this sport, more than the actual, preciseness. And I think a professional wrestler can tell that she's not exactly, you know a, a perfect wrestler,
Right.
but I didn't really care about that. I just wanted her to feel and to breathe the character, and feel completely at ease with her body, and that was the main concern.
Yeah, it feels very natural and sort of feeds into essentially every other scene. It's got this kind of in the back of your head thinking about her.
Mm.
Her co-star Gerard Depardieu. Can you talk about? I mean, you've collaborated with him before. I'd love to hear about sort of maybe his initial impressions of the script, and maybe playing. I don't know if it's a fictionalized version of himself. I don't know. Can you just talk about sort of the early days of him becoming involved in this project specifically?
Yeah, it was a tricky moment when I sent him the script, because it was the script was more or less exactly what you see in the film. I mean, I cut some stuff, but so when I sent him, I needed him to trust me, that I wouldn't, manipulate his image, or transform, or to be voyeuristic about who he is. But I was truly inspired by his excess, of course, his excessive personality, and also his very strong contradictions, like both rude and super tender, both generous and very selfish. And this contradiction that I had observed in Depardieu is something that is very inspiring, because cinema for me is a way to express, multiple stuff in one person. And he symbolizes to me the deep contradictions and the conflict. He's a very conflicted person in my eyes, but I didn't pretend that I was going to portray him in a documentary way. And he is so smart, because he read the script, and he knew that it was a fictionalized kind of mise en abîme, kind of, meta, that it was just a game. It's a play. He's an actor, so he loves to play, and he loves to act. And even if the character looks a little bit like himself, he's gonna play with that. And he knows how to put distance and to breathe within this, strange situation. And he never talked about Georges as if Georges was himself. He always says, this guy is really a pain in the ass, or this guy is like this. But he never thought it was him, which was really rich and interesting for me.
Yeah. Can you talk about he's this like larger than life figure in cinema. He's this like brash, bold actor. When I think of him, I think of him delivering like big monologues and great speeches and things like that. Can you talk about sort of working with someone like that for such a quiet sort of quiet film, sort of tender and subtle? Was there anything you had to do to kind of bring him down to the level of the aesthetic you were looking for?
Well, he's a genius, so it's both very exigent and demanding, but also extremely easy to direct him, because he's a real actor, and he loves to be directed. And if you give him enough food, he's gonna, and just a frame, because once he's framed, and he always looks at what kind of framing I'm doing. He knows, he can feel. So of course he understands, because we've worked together before, that I love how when he is silent, so much stuff comes out. and he can play with that. He knows so well how to play with that. Not really with me, with everyone. He can play with that. So once you capture this thing, he gives so much. He gives everything. He's an extremely generous actor. Um, of course, he is impatient, and he is, you need to deal with other stuff, but he's a very professional actor. So, I mean, for a director, it's just a dream. And Deborah was extremely professional also, and they really, matched in a way, because they can recognize each other in this kind of, also in the presence. They have a presence, and I think Depardieu admires also actors who don't have to move too much, and they are just there, and a lot comes out because it's charisma. It's like, it's this thing that he has, of course.
Yeah, he's magnetic in the film when he's being silent. Even just the way he breathes and the way you pick up on some of the way he's breathing adds this kind of like rhythmic quality to the film that I think.
Yeah, definitely. We kind of emphasize that in sound editing.
Yeah.
I really wanted his breathing to be like kind of scary, because it's, Shakespearean, kind of almost dead guy, but so alive, because he's eating all the time, and he's so there.
Yeah, it seems like death and mortality are kind of lingering in the background of every scene for various different reasons. You mentioned like you watch him just devour food and fried chicken, but there are all these like scares that perhaps he's passed on, but there's no. It feels it just adds this kind of force to the film. Can you talk about sort of death and mortality and its role in the film?
Yeah, I consider this film a film about death in a way. Like, to me, it was an exploration of how you can be so alive, but also flirting with death all the time, and how this dialogue between almost dead and alive is just making this character, hold on to what he loves the most, which is acting and creating in a way. But it is a sort of variation on what death what would be what it would be like for him to die. Even it's kind of always there. It was a thought that was there when I was writing, of course, and during the shoot. And also because Depardieu himself has this thing that is, he's a surviving person. You wonder how he can be still alive with all this excess. It's just so much.
Yeah. I want to go back to something you mentioned, accentuating his breathing on the soundtrack. The score is so sparse and beautiful in the film. I'd love for you to talk a bit about the music choices and this wonderful like choral backdrop to everything.
Yeah. I worked with this amazing musician called David Babin. His scene name is Babix, but and so we met a lot with David. And at the beginning, we wanted, since the film was about those two robust characters, we wanted really robust instruments. So we were thinking about tuba and brass bands, and something really like kind of New Orleans kind of. We were really brainstorming about all that. And then as I was shooting, and then we were talking, and then the first kind of edit scenes that I showed him, I thought, I think we were gonna need to just go to something more essential and organic and very tender. And we thought about a lullaby. For some time in the first version of the edit, there was a lullaby sung by Cameroon singer that I finally didn't keep, but it kind of made me come into this kind of rhythm and edit in a certain way. And then we used choirs. I mean, those singers. We used how do you say, computer kind of computer, kind of dirty computer recordings of their voices, and we also use them very, very neat. So we and David composed all these different songs, the madrigal, which is kind of a medieval thing, and we kind of played, but it's only voices. There's only voices in the score.
Yeah, it speaks to this kind of feels holistic approach to this film about excess, but sort of through pared down, quiet, little paring back. One of the excesses in particular, it's funny that you mentioned the film was built from this image of this man fainting and falling into a woman's arms, because one of the central images that has stuck in my mind these months since I've seen the film is the image of Depardieu staring at the fish tank. I want to ask you about where that image came to you, where that like particular brand of excess popped into your head, and then maybe any like practical considerations with were those real fish? Were they digital fish? I'd love to
They're digital actually, but they so I was thinking about what kind of animal and kind of fantasy animal this guy would have, because he would just want something that nobody can have and that is very expensive or just super complicated to get. And so I thought about those fish that you actually can't get because they're in the abyss, and I thought, well, he's gonna make that possible, even though it's not possible. But in the film, you just don't really, stop on that idea that they come from really, really deep down where there is no light. So I also liked the metaphor of this actor who only exists when he's in the light, and he's also really attracted to darkness and to being alone, but he also needs the light. So those fish were a little bit like him, like they like to be in the depth, but then they also want to be seen and to be captured,
Yeah, it's really an evocative and beautiful image. Just those, again, shapes interacting with each other, the shapes of the fish and the shape of Depardieu staring at them. I'm always curious about films that have films within films in them. How do you land on what the film within the film should be? And can you talk about writing the film for the film within a film? And that scene, especially because the ending is so phenomenal, that scene that they're shooting at the end.
It's weird because I first wrote the words that I wanted Depardieu to speak, to tell, sorry. So it was very musical and kind of poetic, and I let myself just go for it and something a bit, 19th century kind of, I don't know. I was kind of in a literary kind of trance, and I thought the things that he needs to say at this moment need to have an echo with his life and have this kind of Shakespearean touch, even though it's kind of it's not a good text, and he also kind of makes fun of it. And the thing that I wanted is that during the whole film he makes fun of the lines, he makes fun of how heavy and stupid the text is. So I needed to write it because I wouldn't dare to do it with someone else's text. And then I wanted that to just transform at the end. And my purpose was because I noticed that with actors, you can just be like, oh, this text or these lines or these, this is so not me and this is not interesting. But then when the magic comes with the camera and you're feeling something, whatever you say, like suddenly can have like something completely mystical. And especially Depardieu, because he has this voice and this, this anchored, he's very, I don't know, he's so strong with his voice and how he just poses his voice that suddenly he just connects to the words and they become super poetic. So that was kind of the progression that I was looking for. It could be very lame these lines and then suddenly become kind of amazing.
Yeah, filtered through Depardieu, he gives them life.
Yeah.
I just want to wrap up with one question. This is something we get from young filmmakers talking or in the audience often when we welcome people to the festival. But you've made a number of short films. Again, like I said, we've had one of them at the festival here. Can you talk about the transition into feature filmmaking and maybe the sort of any changes in your style or approach that you needed to make to accommodate that transition to features?
Mm. It was a weird transition for me because I did make several shorts in school at Tisch first, and then when I was out of NYU, I came back to Paris. I directed 3 other shorts. So it took me quite a long time compared to maybe some other people who are ready to shoot their first feature when they're out of school. And also, I wrote so many scripts that I didn't that didn't come through because I don't know, I was not passionate enough about them, or I didn't feel it. And so it took me like, I don't know, 5 years to suddenly I was like, this is my story. Then I found my producer, and everything went super quickly when I actually wrote Robust. But before that, it was a really long maturation, and what's different is the money, I guess, because suddenly you have more money, you can have a crew that is so professional, and you can take time to just, wow, it's so amazing. I spent like 3 months on breaking down the script with my DP. Everything is just so rich because you have time and you have more money and so it's a privilege. I mean, I felt super lucky that I could have time and money because they're related, of course, which is not something that I really experienced with my short films where it was more, emergency filmmaking.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, congratulations again on the film. It's a wonderful film. We've had one great screening of it. I think we may even have another. I can't recall, but I think there's one coming up. So thank you for sharing it with us
Thank
at
you.
the festival, and it was great to talk to you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thanks.